Going back to 2016, 2017, we can see an awful lot of negative coverage about Nikon in the press, about the decisions they're making in regard to cameras, the cameras they're releasing, the frequency that they're releasing cameras, their financial results, layoffs, and on and on and on. And then, of course, 2020 hit, and we had the worst planet-wide economic disruption since the 1930s. And still, through all this, Nikon was hard at work consolidating, consolidating plant production, right-sizing the corporation, and getting themselves ready for a continuing decline in the camera market. I mean, we're looking at SEPA numbers for calendar year 2021 to approach 5 million units. And that's a shadow of where it was about 10, 12 years ago, when the market was, well, it was on top of the world. So 2021 came along. We still had a lot of disruption in the market. We're still seeing so many supply constraints. But Nikon released a development announcement on the Z9. And then they also started teasing us in October before finally announcing the Z9, which showed and answered a lot of critics, showing that Nikon can not only deliver a full-frame mirrorless camera, but one that can stand up to and outcompete the competition. I'm talking about the Canon 1DX Mark III and the Sony Alpha 1. 8K video up to 60 frames per second. And stills mode, 120 frames per second at 11 megapixels, perfect for those of us in social media. But if you're serious and you want to do 20 frames per second lossless and burst mode, that's Nikon RAW, well, 20 frames per second at a bit rate of 1.2 gigabytes per second. It's a truly amazing camera. But sadly, for financial numbers, we didn't get many sales in 2021 in the final quarter. I think it started shipping around the 23rd, so they did get some revenue, but we do have some good news. But before I get into the good news, and this is what's going to shock, let's take a closer look at 2021. As you can see right on the side here, 2021 was their worst year in 10 years. Operating profit was down 12.5%, and that was huge. That was significant, and that really concerned a lot of people. A lot of people who love Nikon, have been with Nikon for decades, saw this number and like, whew, is this a one-off? Is this due to write-offs, due to the consolidation? Are these talking about extraordinary items? And on a financial sheet, when a company does some sort of reorganization, they will take write-downs for a given year and say, okay, let's take these losses in this year, so you'll see a really negative year. But again, we had the supply constraints all over the place. So 2021, fiscal 2021 really looked bad, and most of fiscal 2021 was 3/4 of calendar year 2020. I really like this slide here because it takes us back to 2012 when the market was doing very, very well, and we can see how well Nikon was performing. And of course, we can see last year it was absolutely horrible at 12.5%. But look at the final year-end projected for March 31st, 2022. That is when fiscal year 2022 will come to a close, and expectations have been revised upwards to 8.5%. And that's a very, very good number. And what's also important to mention here is that the outlook for fiscal year 2022 has been revised upwards by consensus estimates. And consensus estimates means anybody on the street, Wall Street, Bay Street, London, Chicago, that have been covering Nikon, that have been estimating their earnings for fiscal year 2022, well, they've revised them upwards. And this is very, very good news. But the question is Nikon out of the woods? And no, not really, because the camera market, as I mentioned, according to SEPA numbers, is projecting towards 5 million units ILC cameras in 2021, calendar year 2021. That's a really low number. It's way down from where we were back in 2012, 2011. So Nikon does have to deal with that, as does Canon and as does Sony, Pentax, Olympus, and Panasonic. But we also have supply constraints, which are not getting better, they're worse. We have supply constraints, material constraints, we have semiconductor constraints, we have shipping constraints, we have human resource constraints. It's just really, really frustrating. I got some takeout last night. I went to the store to pick it up, a local store called Swiss Chalet, and there were some really unhappy people there because they've been waiting an hour for their goods, for their food, for their meals. I understood their frustration, but I also understood that the people working behind the counter, there's not enough of them. They're stressed. They've been working overtime. They've been working extra hours. It's everywhere. It's everywhere in this world, and that's affecting Nikon as well. So Nikon's up against some pretty significant constraints. But as far as technology and innovation goes, what they've showed the world with the Nikon Z9 is not only can they compete, but they can beat out the competition. When you hold up the Nikon Z9 against the Alpha 1 and the 1DX Mark III, it looks very, very good. I'm so excited by this camera that if I had twice the amount of subscribers or revenue of this channel, I would have pre-ordered the Nikon Z9, and I'd love to have it here in my hands. I have a special relationship with Nikon. To me, going back 20, 30 years, I always saw that Nikon and Canon were the two best companies out there. They would kind of leapfrog each other. And in fact, go back a little further, and Nikon was the company on top. They were the innovator. And you'll see, go back in time, you'll see Pentax was there and others. It kind of changes over time. And Canon has kind of taken over. They have 47.9% market share. They're in first place. Now, when it comes to mirrorless, that's a different story. When it comes to mirrorless, Sony's in first place. But in terms of innovation, looking forward, and this is what really matters here, how can Nikon turn that innovation into more sales? And I still think there's room in their lineup. The Nikon Z6 and Z7s are really, really wonderful cameras. It's not as capable as some other cameras, but you also have to look at their price. They're also a lot more affordable. If you look at the Nikon Z9 with its autofocus, it's very good. It produces very good video. And if you're a stills person, then you're probably looking at the Z7. However, I still think there's room for a Z8, and there's been rumors of a Z8, because what it can do is it can merge the capabilities of, well, I was going to say merge the capabilities of the Z6 and Z7, but no, not really. It can look at the R5 and say, okay, let's take what the R5 has and put it in a Z8. I know what you're thinking. The Z7 can do high megapixel. We don't need it. And yes, if you're a photographer, I agree. The stills capabilities of the Z7 are fine. So take those stills capabilities of the Z7, improve upon them a little bit, bring them up to the Z8, but then take those video capabilities of the R5, the 8K 30 frames per second RAW, 8K oversample 4K, bring that over to the Z8, because while you might be very happy with the Z7, when it comes to the Z6, it doesn't come anywhere close to what the R5 can do. Now, what Nikon can do is they can say, okay, look, we were going to separate it from the Z9, and we will give it a record timer, not so much an overheat, because I think they would have learned from Canon. Give it a similar size body, and yes, you're going to have some overheats, and this is the conditions you can work in. Firm things up a little bit more, because Canon didn't do a good job. They really fumbled that. And what they did, what Canon did, is what was, in fact, a very, very powerful camera was completely just blown over by all the issues of overheating, and it was annoying. And I agree, for a month or two, getting through all this and really trying to determine the capabilities of the camera from a video standpoint overshadowed the strong stills capabilities. So I think there's definitely a place for the Z8. Now, in terms of pricing, it's really tough to forecast a price. And we look at the Z9 and say, well, look, they price it $1,000 lower than the competition, still being very capable. They're not going to do something like that with the Z8. And the reason for that is, look at the pricing of the Z7 and the Z6. Unless they're willing to lower the prices of the Z7 and perhaps the Z6, they can't really drop the price of the Z8. Now, what I could see them do is drop it by $300 or $400 relative to the R5. So in essence here, what we saw from these numbers and why they shock us so much is when we had such a terrible fiscal year 2021 with all the layoffs, with the talk of consolidation, and this wasn't just talk, this was Nikon putting out press releases saying they're consolidating, they're right-sizing the organization, they're changing production, they're consolidating production. With all of this going on and a fiscal year 2021 contraction of 12.5%, and then we see they're losing market share to Sony, it didn't look really, really good. But now we have the Z9. We have much better financials. We're seeing financials projected for year-end, that's March 31st, 2022, for fiscal year 2022, that are better than some of Nikon's previous years, going back to like, what, 2015, 2016? Let me take a look here. Yeah, it would beat out 2016. It would just barely beat out 2015. And in fact, if we go back to 2013 when the market was looking really, really good, only that year just barely ekes out what is projected for March 31st, 2022, so fiscal year 2022. I think if you're a Nikon owner right now, you can relax, you can take a deep breath, and definitely take this as a win. You're not going to have to worry about Nikon going away anytime soon, and I'd like to see that pyramid back where we've got Canon and Nikon fighting it out. Sony isn't going anywhere, so we can see the top three paces. I think they're looking good for the next, shall we say, 8 years. Now, in previous videos, let's see if I can speak here. In previous videos, I pretty much figured that it was Canon and Sony that were guaranteed to last into 2020 or 2030, and I now can say that I have no doubt that Canon, Nikon, and Sony are the three companies that I have no problem seeing surviving and thriving into 2030. I don't think the market's going to consolidate too much further. The market is a very, very strange place. We're seeing phones, smartphones, that are what people are relying on for most of their stills and video capabilities. But I think we're going to get to a point where that's going to level up. Most of the people that have gone to smartphones for stills have gone. A few others will trickle over, but I think we're going to see the market stabilize somewhere between 4 and 6 million units year over year. Now, there's something else I do want to talk to you about, and I'm not going to go into detail about this because it's a topic I'm very uncomfortable about. Yesterday, I received several comments asking me to comment on the news, the posts that Craig at Canon Rumors put out. And I replied that first, I didn't know what was going on. I really didn't. It was the weekend. I was going about my life. But Craig had tweeted many things, and then he posted something on his website, and I was asked to comment on it. And I said, well, see, here's what my channel is about. It's about camera news and rumors, content creation, and tips and tutorials about camera gear, accessories, lenses, all that kind of stuff. It's not really about going into personalities. It's not about covering things from a tabloid point of view. I don't feel comfortable doing that, and I have no interest in doing that in any way whatsoever. Now, I have had Craig on the show, and I've done an interview, but it's not a Mike Wallace kind of 60 Minutes interview where I'm going to try to dig up every bit of dirt. It's more of a personal interest video for you, for people who watch Canon Rumors, who read Canon Rumors and want to know a bit more about the person behind the scenes. And I have fond memories of, I wouldn't say working with Craig, but speaking with Craig. This goes back to when I first started the channel. I had a vision for my channel, and it started to move into news and rumors. And at first, I didn't want to go that direction. I wanted to cover reviews. I wanted to do tutorials. But when I saw how videos on news and rumors just exploded, I thought, well, don't kick the gift horse. Go with that. But I wanted to reach out to Craig at Canon Rumors because I was covering Canon most of the time back then, and I was using him as a source a lot of times. And I wanted to talk to Craig because I didn't want to have any bad feelings. I didn't want to feel like I was ripping him off. So I called him up, I talked to him, and we had a nice conversation. We talked for a good half an hour or so. And I told him my vision of the channel, what I was trying to do. And he said, yeah, I don't see any problem. Just, make sure you cite me, make sure you mention it. But he said, you're not just reporting news like I do. You're providing your analysis and opinion. And that's kind of where I've separated myself from others. You see, there isn't a camera news channel out there. Yes, Fro Knows and others do cover the news and rumors, but I really do sort of have a niche. I'm covering off news and rumors, but it's providing that analysis and opinion. When I was looking at replacing my 70D with a 90D or some other camera, I couldn't stand camera channels that would just go out there and just say, here are the rumored specs. Well, I got that from Canon Rumors or Northlight Images. Why go to YouTube to just have somebody put those in a video where I have to spend 2 to 10 minutes looking at it when I can just read it on a piece of paper? No, what I wanted is their insight. How probable are these rumors? What are the expectations? What are the timelines? Pricing? I wanted to know the forecasting. And so when I started my own channel, well, that's what I started to do with the news and rumors. I provided my own analysis and opinion, which I am still doing here today because I covered off the financials, and that's great. I could have taken just a minute to do that. But like a lot of people, when you look at the financial statements, what does EBITDA mean? What does operating profit mean? All these terms can seem abstract, and I wasn't going to do a Bloomberg type coverage. I just wanted to cover off the key points, where we are today, how that compares to the past, and where we're going in the future. So past, present, and future. So going back to my conversation with Craig, I wanted to make sure there weren't any issues. And I had people come at me saying, you're just ripping him off, you're just doing what he says. And people will go directly to him and say the same thing. But little bit did people know that behind the scenes, I'd already talked to Craig and made sure that I wasn't taking away his dinner, pulling things off his plate, because that wasn't the intent. If anything, I want to highlight and showcase where the news was coming from, to send people to his site that were video users but had no interest in reading. I wanted to sort of encourage them to go to his site. But it's almost been a bit of a sad year, because at the end of 2020, Nakashita also gave it up. And they put a tweet out, or not a tweet, they put out an update on their Twitter page saying that by the end of December, we might be gone. And sure enough, January I checked and Nakashita was gone. And to me, I hold Nakashita and Canon Rumors in the same vein. When they put something out, you can consider it to be fact. Now, Canon Rumors is a little bit different. He would have a rating system from CR0 all the way up to CR3. Now, if it's CR2 and 3, those are the ones I would consider very credible. They're coming from known sources and they've been validated. CR3 comes from multiple sources, and sometimes in the rumor industry, believe it or not, these leaks are actually coming directly from the manufacturer. Whereas Nakashita just focused on, this is what we know, this is what is happening, these are cameras that are registered. And I felt confident that if I was reporting what these two were doing, then providing my analysis and opinion, I was going to be right more times than not. So I'm going to miss Nakashita. But Canon Rumors is a slightly different story. Canon Rumors isn't going anywhere. As Craig puts out in this post, and I'm not going to go into details because you can go to Canon Rumors yourself and read the post, Canon Rumors is going to continue under new management. And as far as Craig goes, well, I've reached out to Craig over the last couple of days, and again, I have nothing to comment on what has transpired. If you really have questions about that, well, I suggest reach out to Canon Rumors and Craig. But I did throw out to Craig, I said, look, after all this dies down, if you want to come onto the channel and do a sort of retrospective, go back in time, do a bit of a time capsule and talk about how you got started in photography and how Canon Rumors came about and how everything's changed over the last few years. And he said, you know what, give me some time, and it certainly sounds like fun. But for all of you, if you keep asking me questions about this, I'm just going to direct you to Canon Rumors, because you know what, like I said, I have no interest in getting into the personal, to getting into any sort of, to people's lives. That's not what I'm doing here. This is not a gossip channel. This is all about news and rumors about camera gears and accessories, filming techniques, content creation, and tutorials. I truly love that stuff. I have no interest in getting into the dirt, and that's why on the thumbnail, you don't see anything mentioning about Canon Rumors or what's been going on, because I don't comment on people's personal lives. This can be a bit of a tough gig sometimes, because we do get some harsh comments. Now, thankfully, I haven't received anything really, really negative. I haven't received any horrible emails. But, you know, sometimes when I get a nasty comment, as long as there's not swearing, I'll leave it up there so people can see this is what goes on and maybe embarrass the person a little bit. Sometimes I just ban them from the channel, because, you see, the whole thing that I've tried to build up with my channel is a community where we can get involved and work with each other and ask questions and learn. One of the goals for my channel was to improve my content creation, to improve what I do. And yes, with this setup here, it doesn't change much, so you don't see any sort of innovation. But I do. When I'm out shooting, when I'm out doing my run and gun stuff, boy, do I notice how I've improved in the results that I can produce today. It makes me feel very good. So I love that I'm always learning. Makes me feel very, very good. And where I can, I try to convey that knowledge and what I've learned to you as well. It's a lot of fun, but especially in this world where you know what we're going through, you're going through it, to have a community where we can talk to each other, where we can converse without people swearing at us, without yelling at us. Because whenever I see that going on, those comments are deleted. I will not tolerate it. I do not tolerate bullies. I want to create a positive environment where you guys can ask me questions or have dialogue with each other. And I'm really, really happy to see that. I see some threads where there's like 10 comments before I get to it. And usually in those cases, I just leave it alone. Let you guys have your own thread without me, you know, poking my head in the door. But it's been a really enjoyable ride, and I've enjoyed the new segments that I brought to the channel, such as doing the live streams again. And the one I did last Friday was an awful lot of fun to me. I hadn't done it in a while, and I had 3 guests on. I had James Jackson, I had Brian Weiss, and Julian from the UK, who's new to the channel. And after the show was over, we stopped broadcasting. We continued to talk and chat for another half an hour. And it was really, really good. I mean, it was like we were there in the same room. And I think I'm going to continue doing the live streams because I think it offers us something more unique where you can interact live with me and the guests and with each other. And that to me is magical. That is what's fun about this. So I know there's a lot of negative things going on. I know there's a lot of negative comments from time to time. But you see, I'm going to push that to the side and I'm going to focus on positivity and what we like about camera gear and accessories, why we're photographers or videographers, because that's what makes me happy, and I think that's what makes a lot of you happy as well. But that's it for now. Please do me a favor, like and subscribe. It does help this channel grow, but I also take it from, well, I appreciate it. It's like a virtual pat on the back. But thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you again soon.